Yesterday's defeat to Galatasaray is still a tough one to take, and I feel absolutely horrific. I feel stressed about the season, but we are going to get into 5 things we learned from that game. I do want to talk about how incredible Rasmus Haaland was, but obviously going into 5 things we learned, we have to talk about a pathetic display from the players, the lack of mentality shown, and more. But before we get into that, I do want to get into a news report about Manchester United players and staff being under investigation for leaking information. And I think it says a little bit about the state of the squad right now. We've got a lot of problems, and these are the problems that we were temporarily fixed under Ten Hag last season, but these were the problems we had under Rangnick reappearing within the squad, and I'm absolutely fed up with it. But an interesting news story came out regarding obviously leaks and Manchester United doing their own investigation on this. It was said that Manchester United are keeping a close eye on new anonymous account on X, formerly Twitter, leaking injury updates about the first team. The account, which was created earlier this year, has quickly gained attention, having been accurate on several injury posts prior to official confirmation from United. Now, this was Yo Insider United. They basically were the first to break that Wan-Bissaka was injured, Reguilon was injured, Martinez was injured. They were first to say that this was bad, and they were spot on with the injuries to the point, where they were saying that 2 days before the Athletic would announce it, to the point it was scary. It was like, I followed it, it was useful, but they were spot on about everything, but it was almost scary. It's like, well, clearly this is someone at the club. Clearly, this is either someone who knows someone at the club, like a family member, or this is a player, this is a member of staff, this is someone at the club. And Manchester United apparently launching an internal investigation on leaks, not just this Twitter account, but other Twitter accounts, to see who it is leaking team information. It said the account has raised suspicion at United, who believe it may be the work of someone connected to the club who has access to confidential information. The club are investigating the source of the leaks to root out any mole. So the club are investigating not just players, but staff, people around the club, anyone who's got confidential information, as they believe there's a mole, essentially. And I don't know if this account is an actual player or is an actual staff member, but it could be definitely someone that's a family member or close friend of someone that is getting information and leaking it out. So the club are doing a bit of investigation because leaks are coming out left, right, and centre. And look, this is a big problem. For me, the fact that so much is getting leaked, the teams are being leaked hours before the game. Most media companies don't release it till 15 minutes before. They say, here's the team 15 minutes before the game, but the teams can be leaked hours before. The injuries can be leaked hours before. There's clearly people in the club who are saying things, telling people things, going around saying things, and it just shows a lack of control. We had this under Ralf Rangnick. Of course, leaks are always going to happen here and there, but no other club has leaks this bad. And it just shows a lack of control. We had this under Ralf Rangnick. Ten Hag fixed it. Players or staff or whoever's unhappy is starting to leak information. And I think the leaks come from a variety of sources, because there was a lot of leaks on people like John Murta, on Richard Arnold. And I think, unhappy staff members have also been leaking stuff like the Greenwood situation. But that brings me to the first thing we learned from the game, because we're doing 5 things we learned, which is the Rangnick era mentality. This is what worried me. It feels like everything's going back to how it was under Rangnick. Leaks, players play well for 20 minutes, they give you some promise, they give you some hope, they follow the system for 20 minutes, and then they're absolutely useless and they give up. And 1 or 2 players put in a good performance, but the rest of them clearly don't care. And why I felt like the Rangnick era is it because it felt like these players had already given up. The mentality of the players, I thought, was embarrassing. The way that they defended, the way that they gave up so easily, the way that they were so easy to beat, the way that they shrugged their shoulders, the way they just looked in their body language, it reminded me of what I saw under Ralf Rangnick. And these were players that have decided 10 games into the season that the season is already over and have given up for the season. That is what worries me. They had given up for the entire season. With 10 games in, you can turn it around. You win our next 3 games and we're fine. We beat Copenhagen twice and then we beat Galatasaray away. We will get out of our group, unless Galatasaray beat Bayern Munich. So Bayern, please do us a favour there. But we will get out of our group if that is the case. But it's not completely over. It feels like it's over because I can't see us turning it around, because whenever things have got bad under Jose, Oli, Rangnick, we don't turn it around, because as soon as the players mentally check out from the season, which is what they look like they did yesterday, things won't be turned around. So I don't think we will turn things around, even though we can, because we're only 10 games into the season. But it's absolutely reminds me of the Rangnick era, the leaks, the body language, and I just think the mentality of the players was absolutely embarrassing. Now, I do want to talk about one of the positives. I mean, there was a few positives. Mason Mount was pretty good, but we have to talk about Rasmus Hojlund. I felt sorry for Rasmus Haaland. The second thing we learned is he's a proper number 9. He had quality today. That the first goal he scored, proper number 9's finish. The second goal he scored, which was offside, was really well worked. The third goal he scored was unbelievable, which was technically the second goal he scored. That was a proper goal. But even other things like hold-up play, the way he kept the ball so well, laid it onto Rashford. It was not just the goals he scored. It was the fact that he was holding up the ball so well, linking up play so well. He was using his physicality. He was, in possession, he was so good. Rasmus Haaland was phenomenal yesterday. Rasmus Haaland, had he got hat-trick, had that one of that goals not been ruled out, and let's say he was onside, he would have had a 10 out of 10 performance today. He couldn't have done much more. He was absolutely fantastic. And I think, unfortunately, yesterday we should have been speaking about a 2-1 win. Well, after Rasmus Haaland put us 2-1 up, we controlled the game out, and defensively shut down. But instead, we're talking about a 3-2 loss and a red card and an Anana mistake. We should be talking about a 2-1 win and how good Rasmus Haaland is. If we don't make that silly mistake 4 minutes after we score a goal, if we don't concede a silly goal, which, again, the sloppy defending, we'd be sitting here talking about how good Rasmus Haaland is. And unfortunately, we're not. And we do have to talk about the other new signing, Anana, who has been shocking. Anana has been really bad. Today and at Bayern Munich was at fault. I don't think he was too bad last Premier League game, but what I've seen from Anana has been really disappointing. He's been nowhere near as good as the Anana at Inter Milan, and he has been incredibly poor. Now, I see a lot of people saying, bring back De Gea, bring back De Gea. That's incredibly reactionary. Did you not watch De Gea in the 3-0 defeat to Sphere, the FA Cup final, many big games? Anana's making mistakes. Anana hasn't been good enough. And what Anana's showing, it gives me Bravo vibes. It's not been brilliant. But at the same time, I saw Anana at Inter last season. We saw him in the Champions League final. We saw how important he's been at Ajax. Let's give Anana a little bit of time, a little bit of patience. And it's definitely a confidence issue there as well. He's making a few mistakes, and maybe he'll be our Bravo. Maybe he'll be our Karius, or maybe he'll end up being a good keeper. But just because Anana's being bad doesn't mean that we should be bringing David De Gea back. I think David De Gea was too disrespected, but I do think that David De Gea was coming to the end of his time. No club wants him now. He's not particularly good on the ball. And while he would have saved some of those things, he did have mistakes in him. I think the problems go beyond Anana. I think Anana's been poor. I think he's at fault. I think he's had a really awful start. But it's not just Anana's fault. Everyone thinks it's Anana's fault. And if we change the goalkeeper, everything will be okay. It's not. The defenders weren't doing the basics. Amrabat played one of the guys on side. We're literally playing players on side. We're not doing the basics. We're not defending as a unit. The midfield are losing their runners. No one's tracking their runners. There's always a man left free on the edge of the box. Some of the wingers don't track back. You can blame Anana, but at the same time, Anana should be doing better. Half the goals, 95% of the goals we've conceded have been the fault of the defence or the midfield. We're being physically out-battled off the pitch, off the ball, which is resulting in us losing possession easily. We're being done so quickly in the turnover. The midfielders aren't being able to track back or cover the ground quick enough. The defenders seem to be out of position or not defending as a unit and making the most simple mistakes. And that's one of the reasons we're conceding a lot of goals. On top of Anana making mistakes, but a lot of the goals are defensive errors. It's not Anana's fault for the first goal. I saw people blaming Anana for the first goal. That was Diego Dalot. Sorry. But the fourth thing is, which links to my fourth point, is that we do miss key defenders. We do. And this is not an excuse because we've not been good enough. And, but the impact of those players being out injured is massive. Martinez is our only good sort of centre-back in terms of moving the ball forward. We look so much better when Martinez plays because we can progress the ball forward, he can break the lines. If Wan-Bissaka had played instead of Dalot, we wouldn't have conceded that first goal, and Wan-Bissaka would have kept Zaha quite quiet. It's one of those games where Dalot struggles against a fast, tricky winger, which Wan-Bissaka thrives in. And if Luke Shaw had played at left-back, then Amrabat wouldn't be playing there to play the player on side, and Amrabat was particularly poor. You've got to look at it and go, if Luke Shaw, Martinez and Wan-Bissaka played, I don't think we'd have lost that game, which it might sound like a silly thing to say, but, Dalot wouldn't have been there to do that silly first goal conceded. Luke Shaw would have been doing overlaps with Rashford, and Amrabat could be in the midfield, so he's not playing them on side. And Martinez would allow us to progress the ball much better. Anana, yes, he gives the ball away, but I tell you what, our centre-backs weren't being much help making them available. At least Lisandro Martinez does. Now, look, Anana was at fault, of course. But my point is the defence was shocking, and I do think those 3 injuries to Shaw, Martinez and Wan-Bissaka, we missed them massively. We do miss them massively. And I think, it's still more than defensive injuries. I think the style of play isn't good enough. The lack of control isn't good enough. We're not doing the basics. Lindelof is not that bad, surely, But you have to look at it in a sense and go, yeah, like that is worrying. We do need those players back, and none of those players are going to be back for 2 months. And I think we could see how important they are. And I have to say, I look at the board. I look at our owners and I think Ten Hag pleaded with you to sign a good ball-playing centre-back in January because he knew Varane and Martinez had a bad injury record and he doesn't fully trust Lindelof and Maguire. Ten Hag pleaded with the board to sign a centre-back. He went to the board, I need a centre-back, I need defensive reinforcement, and they didn't do that. And for me, that is from the board, from the owners, the fact that we didn't get Todibo or Pavard. I mean, more importantly, the fact that we didn't get Kim Min-jae, who actually would have chose us over Bayern Munich if we could have guaranteed we'd pay the money. Imagine if we had Kim Min-jae to play alongside Varane today instead of Lindelof. Because I have to say, people last week everyone was scapegoating Rashford. This week everyone's scapegoating and Anana is the problem, but Lindelof's been shocking these last few games. Lindelof's been absolutely shocking. I actually want Maguire to start the next game. Call me crazy. Now, I want to say this. Last week, Rashford was the problem. In August, Mason Mount was the problem. And this week, Anana's the problem. And while Anana deserves criticism, Rashford deserves criticism, I want to just remind you guys, not one single player is the problem. Getting rid of Anana and putting David De Gea back in goal isn't going to fix much. Dropping Marcus Rashford and playing Garnacho on the left wing isn't going to fix much in the long term, although I do think that Garnacho deserves a start. Dropping Bruno Fernandes and playing Anthony on the right wing will still have problems because when we've played without Bruno Fernandes in the past, we've been dreadful. We can't get involved in the game. Dropping one player and replacing with another player isn't going to help. We need about 6 new signings. That's what, genuinely, I'll be honest, we need about 6 new signings. We need better depth. And do you know what we need? A good recruitment team to back Ten Hag, rebuild with Ten Hag, and new owners. Now, this brings me to my 5th and final thing we learned from the game is that we had no ball control. And even though Hannibal Mejbri came off, and I think Hannibal Mejbri had a good first half, bringing Eriksen on allowed us to slow down the tempo of the game and control the game. We were playing these really fast, erratic passes, one touches. It's like we couldn't take touch and the balls were bouncing and we couldn't really control the game because we were almost rushing it, bouncing balls, playing it around so quickly, not taking many touches. So Eriksen comes on and he was actually really good when he came on because he could slow down the tempo of the game. He could bring control to the game. And obviously Mejbri had to come off and Mejbri was good, but I do understand why Eriksen came on. But I have to say, the way we're so erratic in midfield, I know that Ten Hag says I want to be the best transition side in the world, but the way when we got the ball, we're like, get up. It's like we're treating the ball like a hot potato. There's no control. There's no playing it through the midfield. There's no patterns of play. For me, that was really concerning. The lack of control we had, I have to say, there was no temperament, there was no control, there was no build-up structure, and I will criticise Ten Hag for that, and this is where Ten Hag's at fault. I'm not Ten Hag out, but Ten Hag is at fault for some of these things, and I will be critical of Ten Hag, and he needs to change some things. The build-up structure, he needs to, help with control and temperament, and I don't think the chances we're creating are super big chances. I think if we have more control, more temperament, we'll create more chances going forward, but also the defence will have more backing because I think although the defence has been poor, the midfielders aren't there to cover. There's a lot of big problems, but control is one thing that Ten Hag needs to sort out. Anyway, smash a like, smash a subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you next time, and bye.